This week on the Virtual Skeptic. Bob goes back and to the left. Back and to the left. Eve is old and moody. Maybe it's algorithmic. I'm your host, Brian Gregory. That's me. I'm that guy.
That's you.
Yep. And I cannot even pronounce what Pierre Cloutier said. Something in French. Probably Canadian French, I'm guessing.
It's still French.
I'm not even going to try. Anyway.
But yes.
You can translate? Go ahead, translate.
No, not really. Oh.
As we just arrive, that's close I can get. Je suis, I don't even, Horcrux? I don't know. I'm guessing.
Horcrux, yeah, I think that's probably it.
Hey, welcome to the Virtual Skeptics. We're doing this again. It's like it's been years, months.
We're back.
Seconds. It's been
weeks.
Long time. And mostly my fault. I take total credit for being my fault. I'm sorry.
I thought it was your internet provider, Yahoo.
Yes, we blame all the problems on Yahoo. Yes, I blame Yahoo.
Well, this week you can blame it on Facebook.
That's true. We can blame it on Facebook. What?
With the Russians.
Because they're, yeah.
The Russians. We'll blame it on the Russians and Yahoo. Russians, Yahoo. It's probably all conspiracy anyway. So
that's how it goes.
Let me introduce these guys because, clearly everybody who watches the show has no idea who you people are. So let me do this.
Sometimes we're not even sure.
Again. First on my list is Bob Blaskowitz, CSI's conspiracy guy, web columnist, blogger for Skeptical Humanities, and Skepticality contributor.
And too close to the camera.
This is Eve Siebert, editor and blogger at Skeptical Humanities and contributor to Skepticality and Insight at skeptic.com. And this is Tim Farley, creator of What's the Harm, former JRIF fellow and prize-winning Instagram photographer, which I don't remember reading that before. Is there a story there?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, but he's
muted.
Yeah.
Is he muted?
Yeah, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Sorry. I took a picture during Dragon Con, and the hotel was doing a little contest of if you hashtagged your photos that were taken in that hotel with whatever the hashtag was. They would give out some prizes, and sure enough, they picked mine as one of the prize winners. So, and I found out many weeks later that I won a Starbucks gift card.
Sweet. Not our sponsor.
And a little widget.
Did the widget?
A little widget you can plug in your phone and the powered thing on your phone, and
is that iPhone or Android?
It's iPhone actually. Oh, actually, it's both. It's got a little adapter.
So you can drain your battery faster.
Exactly. You can drain your phone battery to blow air in your face.
Yes.
Or you can keep it in its original baggie, so it'll be a collectible in hundreds and hundreds of years.
It has the hotel logo.
The noise that it makes because it's
it has the hotel logo.
Also, not our sponsor.
Yes. So anyway, yes, I did win a prize.
The tag at the end of the show. We are not sponsored by Starbucks or Hilton.
Nope.
Unfortunately. There you go. That's the people, and this is the Virtual Skeptics, which I know you all have forgotten because it's been so long. But if you're watching and you're on the internet, which I hope, because otherwise I would have no idea how you're doing this, you can tweet with hashtag Virtual Skeptics, like Tim. That's Tim Farley and his mask, and or you can go on the YouTube and there's a live chat there. If you participate in either of those two,
that's a good one.
Things, then I will.
Nah. Jeez. Look down my phone for a second. Aliens that invaded.
Black Lictroids from Planet 10. Sorry.
Right now I have my students faking UFO photos.
Yeah?
Nice.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Can you share some of them? Because that would be awesome too.
I'll see what I can do for next week. I'll see if I can get some permission to share it.
Sweet. Well, you can compare them to the whole. What was the guy?
Billy Meyer.
Billy Meyer. Yeah, you can compare
Yeah,
it to
I
the
showed
Billy
him in
Meyers.
class. It's like, look, guys, they don't have to be any good at all.
And you can start a cult.
I know.
A weird little man will occasionally email you angrily.
All you need is no ethics whatsoever, and you can succeed. Anyway. So let's just dive right into this week's mess. I think Eve is first. Eve is going to tell us some old news.
Yeah. Recently. It's not that recently now.
Old news.
But originally when I was going to talk about it was recently. The New York Times, the BBC, The Guardian, and many others ran stories about an exciting and supposedly groundbreaking discovery in some Viking Age graves.
It's a game changer, Eve.
Yeah, yep. Scientists are baffled. I don't know why, but they usually are. In February, Annika Larsson, a textile archaeologist at Uppsala University in Sweden, was working on an exhibition on Viking couture in Enköping. She was looking at a silk band placed around the head of a skeleton found at a grave in Birka, where the Viking warrior woman was also buried. It's a very big grave burial area. The silk band has a geometric pattern on it. If you can bring up the first slide, we can look at it.
Ooh,
see, so geometric pattern, and people have always just looked at it and gone, that's a geometric pattern, all right. But the designs looked...
That's it. That's the thing.
The designs looked familiar to her, and then she says, I remembered seeing them in similar Moorish designs and silk ribbons from Spain. I understood it had to be a kind of Arabic character, not Nordic. She concluded it was square Sufic Arabic script, like this example, the next slide.
Say that again, square...
Sufic script. So that's writing in there.
Where? In the middle?
The square sort of things.
I can only see pixels.
Okay.
What? Okay, the center part where it looks like could be a pattern.
Yeah,
that's pixelated.
Well, actually, all of the sort of diamond shaped thing, and in between them
Okay.
That's all Sufic.
They look more like mitochondria, but I'll just go with the writing. Okay, good.
Yeah, okay.
Like the little maze things, because those are kind of cool. The little like square things with a little like a maze in it. Or...
Yeah, the maze things may actually say Allah. I'm not sure. Oh. I'm not sure.
Because they seem all different.
Know. Anyway, according to Larson, the ribbon says Allah in a mirror image script, reading left to right. Larson suggests, quote, perhaps this was an attempt to write prayers so that they could be read from left to right, but with the Arabic characters they should have. She has found now Arabic writing on many other textiles found in Viking Age graves. She also claims to have found the name Ali, cousin and son-in-law of Muhammad and fourth Caliph of Islam. She has not claimed to have found Muhammad, interestingly enough, which would be kind of a long name, I believe. Anyway, but Ali is particularly important in Shia Islam, and she's suggested possibly some sort of Shia connection. So that's nice and all, assuming it's all true. Even if it is all true, it's not really that groundbreaking. It's well known that Vikings had interactions with Muslims, for instance, the ring in the next slide. That does have a Sufic inscription, not square Sufic, but Sufic. And it says for Allah, and it was found in a 9th century Birka grave. There are, however, a few problems. First, this isn't a peer-reviewed study. It comes from a press release from the University of Uppsala and various interviews Larson did. Some bones are being DNA tested, but those results won't be available until next year. And that kind of sounds like it's a different project anyway. Related, but different. Larson also seems to be making some unsupported conclusions based on her discovery. She says, "My opinion is that those who wore the fabrics must have understood the symbolism. But certainly, the person who wove the fabrics could read and write and knew what the characters meant." Yeah. And while she doesn't insist that the people buried with these textiles were Muslim, she does say they are partaking in a worldview shared by people living in Central Asia, and that Viking burial customs were likely influenced by Islam and the idea of an eternal life in paradise, unquote. She's produced no evidence to support any of those views, and they're all highly dubious. The idea that even though they're backwards, that the people knew what the words meant and what they symbolize.
If they are words.
Well, we'll get to that.
Yeah, my first thought is Americans with Chinese tattoos.
Well, exactly. We'll get to this too. There are things like there are runic inscriptions by people who were apparently not literate in runes. It's just like on jewelry, like goldsmiths, Germanic goldsmiths who didn't actually know how to write runes, but had seen runes on jewelry and thought, well, we need some runes here for pretty or for, status. And
Well,
that may be the case.
Nobody ever wears things they don't know what they mean.
Exactly. And yeah, so there are real problems with these leaps she's taking.
Huge, gigantic flying leaps.
Huge leaps. According to the New York Times, Larson believes there's evidence to support her opinions in Viking mythology, in 12th century historical texts from Scandinavia, and in the works of Ahmad ibn Fadlan, who famously described an encounter with the Viking Rus along the Volga River. Most importantly, he described a ship funeral, which if you've seen the 13th Warrior or read The Eaters of the Dead, it comes up there. But he actually depicts someone just he actually depicts the Rus as really quite foreign. But
you mean
regardless,
not like basically Muslim?
Yeah, not basically like Muslim at all. But aside from
were they partaking of a culture of Eastern Europe?
They so weren't. Well, Eastern Europe, because they were sort of Eastern European by then, but no, really not. He thought, like their lack of ritual cleanliness was rather appalling, for instance. But anyway, aside from Ibn Fadlan, I'm not sure which works she's talking about, since she doesn't name any, or the New York Times didn't name any. But I have my suspicions, and if I'm right, she's wrong. If there are vague correlations between Norse views of the afterlife and Muslim views, so the fuck what? There are vague, similarities between all sorts of things. Cherry picking a few details in an only partially understood mythology and then comparing it to another religion is the sort of thinking that gets you to ancient aliens. And I don't know, but I suspect that the 12th century historical texts are ones that trace the foundation of various Scandinavian dynasties to Asia, specifically to Troy. Lots of European countries had Trojan-based foundation stories. Virgil started it with the Aeneid, then everyone else wanted a Trojan founder. And there's no historical basis for any of them. And the Scandinavian ones are particularly crap. Like, the Aesir, the name for one of the races of gods, they're called Aesir because they came from Asia. And, that's just crap etymology to make the story work. So if that's what she's referring to, that's really crap. In an interview with the BBC, Larson said, quote, "We know from other Viking tomb excavations that DNA analysis has shown some of the people buried in them originated from places like Persia, where Islam was very dominant." Unquote. And, that's certainly a possibility. But if she's talking about the DNA analysis I think she's talking about, again, she's not really specific, she's wrong. Per Holk analyzed the DNA from a tooth belonging to one of the women found in the Oseberg ship burial in Norway. And he found that she belonged to haplogroup U7 and suggested she or her ancestors came from Persia. But several other tests on other remains from the burial, other teeth or other bones, failed to replicate the results. And there seems to have been little or no recoverable ancient DNA left in the remains. So it's very possible the U7 result may have come from contamination. And, valid result at all.
Hello?
Hello, Bob?
Okay. Everyone is frozen.
Oh, okay. It turns out there is just one other teeny tiny little problem with Larson's claim, and that is absolutely everything. Stephanie Mulder, an associate professor of Islamic art and architecture at the University of Texas, Austin, went on an epic 60-tweet rant about the story.
Mulder went on a rant?
What?
Mulder went on a rant?
Yes. Among the problems she and other experts identified.
Spelled the same way?
Square, yes. Square Kufic is unknown in the 10th century. It only became common 500 years later.
Oops.
And the same is true of the Moorish work that she identified as being similar. That's much later. Even if it were Kufic, the ribbon doesn't say Allah. It says La. And that, transliterated is 3 L's. And also the end of the word is missing. So it's sort of like Larson has extrapolated it. If you bring up the next slide, you can sort of see this. You would accept, the ribbon is frayed at the edges, definitely, so you might think the rest of the name was there, but it's disappeared. But again, this is a geometric script. So Allah's name, if it were there, would be a square, as you can see there, that she's extrapolated. So it wouldn't just expand horizontally, it expands vertically. It'd be above the line. Textile expert Carolyn Priest-Dorman says the ribbon could not have included the entire word because it's too narrow. And that's not a matter of it being frayed. There's just not enough room in the ribbon. She says, quote, Larson saying the artifact was wider than it was. So, why did this story spread so far with so little fact-checking? Well, because it upsets white supremacists, which is, nice to do.
I'm down with that, personally.
Yeah. White supremacists have loved Vikings.
There's value in pissing off white supremacists.
Yeah. They love Vikings. They've loved Vikings since the 19th century. The Nazis loved Vikings. Neo-Nazis still love Vikings. They've managed to ruin runes and Thor's hammers for the rest of us. So this story appeals to a
until
noble...
Marvel came around.
Until
Marvel came around.
Yeah.
Redeemed Thor first.
Sort of. Anyway, so the story appeals to a noble desire to make Nazis cry. That's great. And big surprise, the Nazis are wrong about Viking purity. Vikings got around. That's sort of the point of being a Viking. They interacted with many other cultures and not always violently. The Vikings did bury people with and distribute artifacts with Arabic writing on them, such as coins and such as that ring we saw earlier. And they even added Pseudo-Arabic to some objects, as was done with runes, as I mentioned. They admired, traded for, imitated, and stole stuff from lots of other cultures. And Arabic culture at the time was sort of, someone referred to it as, it was like Baghdad was what Paris is now. Having Arabic, things with Arabic on it may have been seen as sort of having some sort of status or cachet. You know, again, all sorts of cultures they were interested in. Excavations at Helge, Sweden, unearthed an Irish bishop's crozier, a 6th century Coptic christening spoon, and if you can bring up the last slide, my last slide, a 6th century Buddha from northern India. Huh. That doesn't mean that they were Buddhist and Irish Catholic and Coptic. They probably weren't.
No, probably
So
not.
This
that
story,
just sounds really
interesting
new
fashion
age.
sense.
yeah.
They're
So
a
this
little
story-
bit Buddhist, a little bit Coptic, a little Catholic. It's new agey. You
Isn't
can
this
just
a
mix
Donny
whatever you
Osmond
want. It's a
song?
potpourri of things.
I'm guessing the Irish
Country, a
bishops
little bit rock and roll.
in the Viking Age would not have been happy if their crozier was taken away.
You don't think that was given over willingly?
Mm.
Yeah.
So this story is bullshit, and it gives white supremacists ammunition because, hey, look, the libtard Jewish-controlled fake news media elite, blah 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 blah, was wrong this one time about our pure white gods. Therefore, we're right. Yay! And you know, we don't want that. So do your fucking work, media. There should be no situation where the Nazis are right about something, anything.
And this is.
And, yes.
Go ahead.
And people who disagree with this story shouldn't be made to feel as if they're on the side of Nazis. I'm looking at you, New York Times.
Yes, that's what pissed me off about this. That
began a paragraph with these words. Not everyone accepted Dr. Larson's interpretation. And you would think they would go on to other experts who thought she was wrong. No, they went straight to the alt-right and then spent the rest of the article refuting the alt-right. And, you know, fine, disputing the alt-right and their general attitudes toward Vikings, but there's valid criticism of this particular claim. Larson appears to be completely wrong. The designs aren't Arabic. They probably aren't Pseudo-Arabic. They likely don't have any meaning. Even if they did, she's leaping to massive conclusions that are not justified. However, white supremacists are and always will be wronger. So, the story was wrong, but white supremacists still suck. Just find a different story to make them cry.
The way that Vikings are being treated in the media these days, they're like being used to validate every, modern sensibility about multiculturalism, about gender equality, and it really speaks to the people who are making this criticism not understanding what they're looking at,
right,
or not understanding context. So just recently there was the Viking warrior woman who does not have any, there's no corroborating evidence from the written record that she was, typical?
Well, I'm not going to say no corroboration because there definitely are references to female warriors. They're just not. They're of dubious historicity.
Yes. So, but we keep seeing that. So, like, okay, now it's the multicultural. Yeah, and not to say that
Well, I mean, their island was hidden for a long time, so
the what?
never mind.
Were you using words?
Wonder Woman, the island was hidden, so nobody
Oh,
was
right,
there.
right,
So
right.
the warrior women were hidden, so nobody knew about them.
I see what you did there now.
Yeah, except Viking warrior women wouldn't have been going around going, "Man, I don't want to kill anyone."
That's true.
They
I
seem
think-
to,
I don't think any warrior women would say that.
yeah. Wonder Woman did.
Well,
Well, she killed people for peace, Eve. Come on.
Yeah. And yeah.
I was just gonna look up what the writing team was for that movie to see how many women were on it.
Yeah.
Never mind.
But yeah, but this is humanities by press release. This never works out well. This is like science by press release. It's just
and
concerning.
again, there's no scholarly paper behind this. I mean, with the Viking warrior woman, there was. There's still problems and questions and context, but there's no scholarly paper. As far as I know, there's not going to be a scholarly paper. It's just some woman looked at a pattern and went, "Hey, it kind of looks like this pattern."
This seems like a pattern. Like there are a lot of people who are publishing based on speculation because of just looking at some old thing. They don't bother to do any of the research or collaboration or
ask. I think in some of the articles it said, she asked people who knew Arabic and presumably people who knew Suffolk Arabic, or Square Suffolk, but she doesn't seem to have asked experts in like medieval Arabic or medieval Muslim culture who would have looked at that and gone, nope. What you've got there is
I've heard that before about something, but I don't remember what it was. What you've got there is yeah. Anyway.
Oh, my favorite. This was circulating today, and following the guy at the truck in New York. People were saying that he was yelling. This was what the
I know.
News people were saying, "Allahu Akbar," which translates to "potatoes are great."
They are.
I agree with that.
Yes,
I feel like
potatoes are great.
I don't believe it enough to kill people over it.
I would not going
Potatoes
to
are
get
pretty
into
cool.
violent insurrection over it, but potatoes are pretty cool.
They're good. They're good.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Oh, jeez. Speaking of potatoes, no. Thanks, Eve. That was very frustrating yet interesting. Like most of the stories on the show.
Frustrating but interesting. That's our motto.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that is our motto.
Mhm.
Speaking of which, Bob. No.
Oh. All right. Well, I don't have a lot, but what I do have
is churse. Never mind.
yes,
Terse or terse?
Churse.
and
It's
Churse?
something
Like churros?
Spencer Tracy said about Katharine Hepburn, I think.
I don't.
so on
Dialect thing.
October 26th, the National Archives released
Yes.
a bunch of files related to the Kennedy assassination. These are 2,800 documents that had not been released before, and it was part of a 1992 law that stipulated their release in 25 years, with, of course, the understanding that the president, if so decided, could withhold documents for national security reasons. So you can imagine that maybe some of the people who are mentioned there are not dead, or some of the techniques that were being used are still being employed, or any number of things that you might be able to infer something about modern espionage based on this stuff here, right? So they're, and this goes back to one of the reasons why we'll always have conspiracy theories, is because there are real secrets out there, legitimate secrets, and wherever you have,
never interesting.
they're not, you know. Anyway, yeah. So the military has secrets. The CIA, they have their secrets. The FBI has their thing. You know, like, it's just how it goes. So what we're getting is not the full 2,800. At the last minute, Trump said he was promising everything. And I actually kind of believe him on this because he's a conspiracy theorist. I hate to say it, it scares the shit out of me, but this guy doesn't have the mental capacity to defend himself against horse shit.
It's pretty clear, yeah.
Yeah, he's to use a phrase, an empty barrel that's enabled by evil monkeys. Yeah. So he was going to release everything. Some people said maybe you shouldn't, not everything. So he ordered a review, which will take 180 days. And what we have found so far, and you'll be stunned, is not much.
I was thinking there was going to be a ton of words that say pretty much everything we know already.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. I mean, there's some little details that are filled out, you know, like some stuff about espionage in Mexico. But like, these are things like reports that that Oswald had received a $5,000 transfer in Mexico, but the Mexican government looked and they found no such transaction. So it was a lead that didn't pan out, you know, that type of thing. We got some details about Mark Lane, who was the lawyer for Oswald's wife and a leading conspiracy theorist. And he had a conversation with, I think it was a Polish journalist, about this is a new one even for me. That was that Tippett, the police officer who was shot by Oswald, was actually, wait a minute, that Tippett, Oswald was Tippett and Tippett was Oswald.
What?
Yeah, I don't get it. So the person that Jack Ruby shot was Tippett.
Okay.
Then, yeah, and that went nowhere, and that's just part of the huge amount of...
The person that Jack Ruby shot on live TV
was
that we have pictures of.
Then who did Tippett or Oswald shoot?
Tippett shot... I have no idea. It doesn't make... Yeah, it didn't make sense to me either. Yeah, but it was just, I mean, it was like a total dead end. It was nothing. And this is really exactly what I expected. You know, we have a good, coherent, evidence-based narrative about Oswald, his whereabouts, his intentions, and what he was capable of doing. He was a Marine marksman. He was not given that hard a shot. He had taken some pot shots at a right-wing general in previous weeks. We know this because the gun in his hand, you know, the bullets matched. We knew that he had tried to shoot someone prominent before. We're not exactly entirely sure about his motives, but we have to be comfortable with that because, you know, history doesn't give up all its secrets, apparently. I don't know we're ever going to get the motives of the guy in Las Vegas, you know? But again, this is unknown knowledge that leads to speculation. And yeah, this was going to be nothing. I figured I would wait until people had a chance to go through it. I mean, it's 2,800 documents, but it is many more thousands of pages of material, including handwritten notes and typed reports and, you know, all sorts of scrawlings and just bibs and bobs. Yeah, I said it, bibs and bobs. And it's going to take time for people to sift through. The New York Times had an interesting way of covering it, which I don't know if I endorse this. It was, what did you find? You know, like, what does it mean to you? And they posted that stuff. Now, the ones that they posted came from, I think, a Virginia professor or something, and some researchers who are working with them. That could go very wrong very quickly.
Has Alex Jones come up with any sort of, you know, really hard-hitting, rational? Sorry, never mind.
What are you talking about, Eve?
I saw where you went wrong there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the release. It was it kind of, from my perspective, a gigantic yawn.
Yeah, I've been following. I mean, I've been thinking about this stuff for a while, ever since the current administration took over.
Uh-huh.
And in like Steve Bannon, who may have at some point had some pretty crazy ideas that he thought the government was hiding stuff. And then,
what's his name? The National Security Advisor was a hardcore conspiracy. What's his damn name? His whack-doodle son too.
Yeah.
Are both, and he was in charge of the national security apparatus for more than a second.
Flynn,
yeah, Flynn. And Flynn Jr.
And they may know something about conspiracies too, to be fair.
This is actually concerning because people who report belief in conspiracy theories are the people who could imagine themselves participating in such events. So this strikes.
It's pretty common that, you know, liars are the least trustworthy, or least willing to trust other people.
Yeah. And I think this is kind of an extension of that.
They know it can happen because they're doing it.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I was just getting at it. I was wondering if these people, once they got to a position where they could possibly access some of this information they thought was hidden, they realize there's nothing there, and that's why they're really pissed off. And
no, the fact that there's nothing there just proves that there's something there.
Yeah, really.
And for someone like Trump, he outsources personal failings, so I don't see him ever being satisfied with anything other than his own perceived brilliance. You know, I think it's a total mess. But we'll see. If something interesting pops up, I'm sure I'll talk about it, or have to talk about it in class at some point. But for me, the JFK conspiracy it's not the most interesting. I mean, there's the most written about it, but it's not. I mean, if you were to look at my books, I don't have very much about the JFK assassination. Almost nothing about it in particular, because I don't find it that it's so well established what happened. You know, there's not much original. There's nothing original to write about it anymore. It's been so picked over.
Stephen King's take on it was pretty funny, or not funny, fun.
Funny?
Not funny, fun. But it was like time travel and stuff. So.
Yeah, probably not necessarily the most historically accurate version.
It wasn't historically accurate at all. It was fiction, which is why it was fun.
Ah, yeah.
I do have one weirdo book on the JFK assassination. You know the author, and I can't think of his name right now. That guy who always writes about it.
Is it Nick Redfern?
Maybe. It was recent. It was like a couple of years.
That's when he kind of appeared.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
it's loony.
Well, you know what? I may have one by him, but I think it like links the pyramids or something to it. Like, who the fuck knows? Like,
yeah, I remember stuff like that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
There are no limits. Anyway, yeah, I'm not surprised that there isn't much new information in these supposedly secret documents. So,
yeah. That's what I got.
Bob. That was interesting. And let's see.
Oh, do you know what? Can I mention one more thing?
Go.
When we discussed some of this, we just hit a little bit of my critical thinking class where we're talking explicitly about conspiracy theories. And my students had never seen the Zapruder film. None of them had seen it. Yeah. And I was kind of amazed because it's like not seeing the Patterson-Gimlin film at any point. You're going to come across it if you... Well, I would think you would come across it if you paid any attention at all, ever.
Most of my students haven't seen Patterson-Gimlin. I don't know that they would have seen...
Yeah.
To them, Kennedy is ancient history.
I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
They don't really understand how... They have a sense of how far back World War II is. That's true.
And, you know, it was... At no point was he looking at his phone. Just tweeting to the Secret Service or something.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably on YouTube, but not because it was originally on YouTube. But
yeah.
But I was trying to explain to them how the country, in some ways, never really got over that assassination because it was so traumatic. And I just kind of casually threw in the Zapruder film, and they were like, "What's that?" I was like, first, you haven't seen Airplane. You don't watch Monty Python.
Which means their parents suck, because my kids have seen Airplane, both airplanes, and a long list of other fabulous art films.
Culturally significant works.
Yes. I know.
Monty Python. They haven't seen...
know. I did on Monday How to Tell a Witch because it was Logical Reasoning Day. And that's how I teach deductive reasoning.
Oh.
She's a witch!
Okay.
It works out, yeah.
A couple of things showing up in the chat here. Let's see. I think Robert Clary. I think Trump is hoping for dirt on Ted Cruz's father in the files.
Yeah.
Oh, that was kind of funny.
What the hell was that about?
Well, Ted Cruz isn't he the Zodiac killer?
Yeah, that too.
This is a internet funny.
I don't even know
it's hard to make Ted Cruz worse than he is, and yet
that's true. That's true. Let's see here. Steve Exton. Apparently, he just chimed in because on the other side of the planet here. Good day, Drat. I missed the start of the show. I'm sorry. Anyway,
sorry.
Psychic medium.
Okay, guys, start over. Go back.
Yep. Okay. He says that psychic medium John Edward, our best friend, is live on Aussie TV at this moment.
Biggest douche in the world.
Yeah.
In the universe.
In the universe.
A bigger douche than a gigantic talking douche.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah.
And just to share back with Steve, John Edward was just in Baltimore maybe a month ago and had a sold out show at the Baltimore Arena.
Shitting me.
Yeah. And I noticed because that billboard's up. So yeah, if I need to vomit, that is one of the things I think about. So there you go. That's the good stuff. Anyway, thanks, Bob. I needed to vomit tonight.
Sure.
No, kidding. I don't know how we got to John and Britt on that. I guess I blame Steve. Tim.
Rings a bell.
Hmm.
There used to be this guy on the show,
Called Tim.
Tim. He was on here all the time. He said really interesting talks about technology and lanyard
Things.
and
Yeah.
some other things. That's all I can remember.
Don't talk about lanyards.
Yeah.
Did you have a falling out of love with Lanyard?
Well, they seem to be sunsetting it.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to get them to respond to any emails, but the whole service has been in kind of a read-only mode for months.
Wow.
You can't add any more material to it. That's what happens when your service gets bought by a company that has a bunch of other products. Sometimes you aren't the priority anymore.
Yeah. Been there, done that.
Yep.
Well, not on the receiving end, not the buying end.
Yeah.
We be able to get your data?
It's all still there in readable mode, and a lot of it's scraped into the Internet Archive. So, yeah, it's
Okay.
there.
Is there RSS? Can you like grab it that way or something?
Yeah, you could probably get some level of information that way. Anyway, that's not what I'm. It's not my topic for today.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to segue into something.
Got me derailed there a little bit. I wanted to talk about algorithms and stuff. Today in the United States, there were some hearings that have been going on about Russian interference in the U.S. election. And the head technical people from Facebook and Twitter and Google were in Washington testifying about ads that were run and stuff like that. And a lot of interesting stuff has come out. Some of the actual ads that Russians paid for. I saw one spin up through my Twitter feed just a minute before the show started. That was an ad with comedian Aziz Ansari holding up a sign to tell people to use Twitter to vote for Hillary Clinton, which of course you can't vote using Twitter.
Yeah.
And of course, Aziz Ansari didn't actually authorize that ad, but someone had taken a picture of him holding up a card and changed the contents of the card to be an ad to ostensibly fool people into trying to vote through Twitter instead of actually voting.
Okay, how many people think that Trump might have tried to actually vote through Twitter? I'm just saying.
Maybe.
So that's all going on, and one of the things that always comes up in this, particularly when you talk about Facebook, is the influence of algorithms and the Facebook feed algorithm and how it pushes stuff. Because
it's related to the Russian ads too, I guess.
Yeah, and how ads are targeted and stuff like that. And a lot of this is done in a very opaque way by these companies because they don't want people to know what the secret sauce is, because sometimes these algorithms can be manipulated. And that's one of the reasons I've never been super fond of Facebook. I always, now they're all becoming algorithmically oriented. But originally, Facebook was driven by an algorithm, and it would show you what their magic sauce thought you wanted to see. Whereas Twitter was just a straight feed of you decide who you're going to follow, and it shows it all sequentially. Yeah. That's changed more recently. Twitter is doing a lot of algorithmic things too, which is kind of annoying. So these algorithms have a huge effect on what we see in our data diet if we're using social media, or even sometimes the front pages of news sites are generated algorithmically. If you use Google News to read the news, what headlines are shown there will be generated algorithmically. And these types of things show up everywhere. And one of the things that I've been noticing in the last few years is if you follow the science behind some of these algorithms that are being generated, some of it's kind of haphazard ad hoc sort of stuff, but some of it is PhD level research into, how can we mathematically derive this from this and stuff like that. And something occurred to me recently, which is a parallel with the kind of pseudoscience research that you see among skeptics when talking about medical research. And in particular, I'd like to point out
I hope he comes back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Huh?
You disappeared there. We
Yeah,
heard
you
nothing
froze
after.
Nothing after what?
Exactly. We didn't hear anything after you started to get to the point.
Okay, I need a. What word was I saying when I stopped?
I started looking at.
Oh, I started looking at the science of. Okay, I lost my whole flow there.
Sorry, dude.
Sorry.
I blame Yahoo.
The how it relates to kind of how pseudoscience relates to medical research, and kind of the sort of the same pitfalls are happening in this computer science research, and in particular,
He's doing this on purpose.
Pausing again.
In particular.
Yeah, you keep dropping out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do the topic then. I'm not sure there's a point in continuing. I checked my router and I'm getting pretty good throughput, and there's nothing else going on. I turned off a whole bunch of equipment, so I don't know.
Let's give it a go.
Exactly
Let's give it a go.
Anyway, what I wanted to get at was the idea of applying Harriet Hall's concept of tooth fairy science to this sort of algorithmic stuff that people are doing. And what Harriet means when she talks about tooth fairy science is when you do a study, you need to have some prior plausibility of what it is you're studying. And the example she gives is you could do a study of the tooth fairy. And it's like, okay, does the tooth fairy give more money for molars versus incisors? Does the tooth fairy give you more money if you put your tooth in a plastic bag and put it under the pillow rather than just putting it under the pillow? Does the tooth fairy tend to not show up when it's raining outside? There's all sorts of things you could study about the tooth fairy, and you could potentially get interesting results about that. But it would be baloney. It would just be nonsense and noise because you haven't established that the tooth fairy actually exists in the first place. So you're just studying a non-existent
Spoiler alert,
concept.
children.
Huh?
Spoiler alert.
Well.
Yeah.
Or unless you're in the humanities and you're doing a folklore study of the tooth fairy, in which case, which is what I would thought of, that's just totally fine.
Well, true. And the same thing is true of algorithms. And one example that came up recently, and to their credit, this particular study was done kind of as an example of this. But of course, the reporting on it was simply horrible. And essentially, someone took several thousand or 100,000 photos off of dating sites and tried to see if they could train a computer to recognize the sexual orientation of someone just from their dating site profile photo. And they basically discovered that they could train an algorithm that would be better at recognizing someone's sexual orientation than a human is. And it was all a very pointless...
They developed gaydar?
They developed a computer gaydar, essentially. But it was baloney because it was this set of profile photos, and you don't even have to think very long about all sorts of confounding things that could be in profile photos. People shoot profile photos in a certain way. They want to look good in them. They're always from a certain angle. Only certain people are even on dating sites to begin with. So it's a self-selected sample.
They use Grinder.
Yeah, there's a million different ways that the input data for this could be terrible. And another problem with this is that a lot of these things are done by training neural networks. And if you go to my first slide, there is a this is an example recently come up, and there have been many others where people have taken neural network recognizers. You know, obviously classifying photos and classifying data is a huge problem because there's millions of photos on the internet, and it would be great if you could search for, I want to see pictures of dogs, I want to see cute cats, stuff like that, and Google could bring it up for you. And actually Google does do that, but it's done with these neural network algorithms. And the problem is the way they build them, they are essentially feeding photos that match or don't match the target into a sort of a pattern matching algorithm that builds a neural network. And once they're done, they don't know exactly what it's doing. Essentially, it's this giant bundle of data that you shove this other piece of data in, and it puts out a result on the other side. So it's this black box. And this photo here, this diagram here, is an example of, in this case, fairly low resolution photos recognized. And on the left, the first thing under each photo is what the neural network recognized the photo as correctly. Airplane, automobile, upside down in that case, cat. But if you'll notice, there's like one little dot in each of these photos. They've essentially changed one pixel, just a single pixel, which to a person just looks like somebody took a pen and put a dot on there and doesn't change your impression of what the photo is.
I didn't even notice those pixels. Yeah.
But for the recognizer, it completely changes it. It changes the airplane to a dog. It changes that yellow cab to a dog. It changes the automobile to an airplane. It changes the cat to a dog, the dog to a ship, the deer to a dog, et cetera, et cetera. And it tells you tooth fairy science going on here in that this algorithm isn't really recognizing these photos in any sort of real way. If you can change one pixel and it completely changes the result that you get out of it. And there have been many, many other examples where there was one where they were training for military purposes a thing to recognize tanks on the battlefield. And they discovered that the recognizer, once they had trained it, could not recognize a tank unless the sky was cloudy behind it, because all the training photos had been taken under cloudy skies.
Yep.
And which, you know, makes you wonder, well, what is it actually recognizing in the photo at that point if the clouds are so important to recognizing? But here's the kicker. If you go to the next slide, and hopefully the animation will work.
Oh, I saw this.
These guys who were figuring out how to fool this recognizer actually managed to figure out how to 3D print a turtle that fools this recognizer into believing it is a rifle in most of the cases, even if you turn the turtle around. Just to see, what you're looking at is a animated GIF from a video, and on the left side is the a little graph of what the recognizer thinks it is, and most of the time it's saying rifle. Occasionally it comes up with a different answer, but as you can see, he can turn the turtle, even turn it in different directions, and it still comes up as rifle.
Is his hands in the photo when it's being recognized?
That's a good question. I don't know if that makes a difference, but obviously any sort of recognizer like this that would be used in the real world would have to deal with problems like that in the images. Like if you were trying to recognize a rifle in someone's hand in the middle of a shopping mall.
Look, he has a turtle.
Well,
right,
if you're
you'd have to be able to
average
handle the fact
American,
that the person was holding it.
don't bring turtles.
Right. But it raises some very interesting questions of we're building, there's many different companies right now building self-driving cars, and a lot of them are being driven off of technology very much like this. And it makes you wonder whether or not there's going to be hacker attacks where literally someone could put up a sign that would look like a picture of a turtle on the side of the road that no one would pay any attention to, but to the self-driving car would look like a stop sign.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, all the self-driving cars stop right there in the middle of the highway. Or worse than that, it looks like a speed limit 65 sign in a residential neighborhood. Or who knows what you could do to a self-driving car by fooling recognizers like this. And I think a lot of this, some of it is just poorly trained neural networks, and maybe if they could give it more data, it would get smarter. But you really kind of wonder whether or not, at some level, some of these scientists are doing tooth fairy science, that they think they're training something to recognize photos, but they're really not. They're training something to recognize, I guess, a very small subset of photos, or a very, special kind, which could be useful. And, if you're looking for pictures of cats on Google, how much harm can it be? But if you're using technology like this to decide whether you're going to frisk somebody in a TSA line, or decide whether or not this person's credit record is worthy of a mortgage granting them a mortgage, or to decide whether or not to investigate this person for financial fraud, you can imagine how a lot of these, kind of poorly considered algorithms could go off the rails and cause all sorts of trouble. And there's literally, like I said, the neural network is a black box. It's not like we can go look at the source code and say, oh, look, it's on line 700 where they're looking at that pixel wrong. You can't do that. All you can do is feed more training data in and hope it gets smarter. And it's scary. It's really, really scary. And I think we need some people on the kind of computer science algorithm world sort of in the pseudoscience implications of doing crap like this.
Yeah.
Of whether or not, and one of the examples was it wasn't an automatic recognizer. It was actually a training program, but it was the TSA's training program to pick out people to get extra scrutiny in the lines at the airport. And it was this crazy list of things like people sweating, and a lot of them, it was, it was kind of like you could guess someone sat around in a meeting and said, well, what would a terrorist be doing if they were standing in a line? It's like, well, they'd probably be sweating and they'd be nervous and da-da-da-da-da, and they just wrote a long list, and then they trained a bunch of people to look for this stuff. And the GAO did a run-through, consulted some, and the program was baloney, that it was not based on science at all. And it's just classic skeptic stuff, but in a new realm where essentially pseudoscience is being applied in places we've never even thought of before.
Now, didn't they train one to basically, they inadvertently programmed in the racism?
There's a bunch of stuff where the sort of the racist tendencies of the programmers sort of get inherently built into the algorithm, either accidentally, usually accidentally.
Something like you look up pretty woman and it's like they're all white women or something,
Oh yeah, and there was a classic one recently. I don't know if it was Google or somebody's photo recognizer was recognizing a person of color's personal photos and coming up with the classifier gorilla under their photos. And it's like, guys, not good.
No.
And then there's algorithms for the flashes on cameras that don't handle skin colors beyond the average white person's skin color correctly.
Mhm.
You know, all sorts of things like this where biases get built into devices and algorithms, and sometimes you don't even know that this is happening. It just seems like something is working wrong. And it's getting scary because people are proposing that we use these algorithms to assist courts in determining sentencing and whether or not someone gets parole, and banks are using it to determine whether or not people get credit. And that is scary stuff when you talk about, you know, racism getting built into the algorithm.
Oh yeah.
And then you accuse the bank of racism, and they say, well, we're not racist. We just let the computer decide. It's like, okay, show us the code. Well, it's a neural network. Okay.
And anyway, he was totally packing turtles.
Right, exactly. The guy was holding a turtle when he came in to apply for the loan.
Well, I was looking at that turtle photo. I saw this, and you did a great job explaining this because there was some stuff in there that I didn't understand when I first read it. That on the underside of that turtle, there looked like something that looks kind of mechanistic. You know, it looks like it could be metal pieces that are fitted together under its little flappy arm thingies.
Yeah.
And then they had a picture of a baseball that they trained that was interpreted as cappuccino or something.
Yeah.
And you could see that the pattern of it was cappuccino-y.
Right.
You know, was like bubbly, foamy, right? But yeah.
Yeah, it's just, you know, it's just preying on whatever the algorithm is actually trained. And there were, you know, worse cases. There was an earlier Let's Fool the Neural Net photo classifier thing that I think I talked about on the show a long time ago, where they literally came up with photos that looked like static, that, you know, it was just a blur. And they would feed it into the classifier and it would say 99% that's a panda, or 99% that's a dog, or whatever. And they would just totally fool this algorithm into believing that that photo was something, and it was nothing. It was literally nothing. It was just this weird pattern of dots.
When they were coming up with these things to print up, right, that with this, like this turtle, how were they able to reverse engineer it? Did they try to make it seem like a rifle?
Yeah, I assume that
box.
I assume that it's since it's algorithmic, they probably used a technique similar to what we in the computer security world call fuzzing, where what you do is you know, this program expects inputs, and usually the inputs are like, here, put your username and put your password in. Okay, well, that's what a user would do. Let me write a program that would write 10 million of the weirdest possible things to put into those two boxes. Like, I'm going to type a username that's the size of the Bible and stuff it in that box and see what happens. Or I'm going to, you know, I'm going to make a password that's, you know, just the number 0, like not even a number 0, but the code 0. So it thinks it's blank, or it's, you know, the size of the moon or whatever. And it just tries crazy stuff. And you can find that fuzzing. I imagine thing where they took photos and then started mutating them. Okay, we'll change these 4 pixels, put that in. All right, change these 4, put that in. And then use that to feed back into their own algorithm and say, oh, look, that turned the panda into a dog. Let's try more of what we did that time. And you could train another network to fool the first network.
Did you essentially say that some of these recognizer programs are subject to pareidolia?
Basically,
Basically,
yeah, exactly.
That's great.
Because that's exactly what they are. It's just a custom circuit that knows, just like the circuit in your brain that knows how to recognize faces. It's a circuit that knows how to, a very complex circuit that knows how to recognize
doggos.
Cat.
Yep.
Heckin' doggos.
And I wonder what the implications are for something like when you're doing massive sky surveys and you're training computers to recognize the orientation of galaxies and that sort of thing, if there's we should be concerned about the reliability of those interpretations.
Well, I don't
I
think.
don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to have any immediate impacts.
I care.
Yeah, well, one of the things they do with
Data
a
might
lot
be
of
corrupt.
those things is they crowdsource the initial data sets. And I just heard Pamela Gay on a podcast talking about her latest crowdsourcing thing. And one of the things her projects and most of the good projects do is they never just do they never just take one person's crowdsourced data. They always hand the same photo to like 15 different people and then do it sort of randomly so that there isn't any way that a given user could target a certain data in your data set. And then you do some statistics on the results you get back. And it's unlikely that, a user who's just trying to be an ass would put a random bad answer in there. But, chances are people who are doing the right thing are going to converge on a similar answer.
Okay. All right.
The dog says, "Yep."
Yep.
Thanks, Tim. That was interesting. I was wondering where you were going to go with it because it listing on my list here is just gaydar study, and I was like, I wonder where.
Yeah. Tooth Fairy gaydar.
Very cool.
Very gaydar. Wow.
So, I only have one little thing, and I'm not even going to play the music. I'm just going to show the little video here. And this is...
She's very realistic, I will say.
She's real.
Oh.
She's a video, but I thought that you guys would appreciate this. Now, this is... I mean, all the voiceover in this is...
Aww.
It's just showing you tails.
Mhm.
Various tails. Talking about how wonderful the tails are. It's all the speech in this video is all in Japanese, but apparently she likes tails. And there it is. This is called Kobo, Qoobo.
Oh boy.
And it's a pillow.
Tail.
It has a tail.
Wow.
It's a gigantic sperm.
It's supposed to be...
It's a tribble.
Well, it's Japanese, so most likely it's a tentacle. But
I was thinking Davy Crockett's hat.
It does kind of look like a Davy Crockett hat-like thing. Anyway, so
that says, "What the hell were we thinking?" in Japanese.
Yeah. So this is a Kickstarter that I'll put the link out there if you want to contribute to the Kickstarter.
Of course, it's a Kickstarter.
For about $100, if you want to contribute $100 to the program, you'll get one of these pillows with a tail that responds to your affection. So when you give it attention, you pet it, it will respond appropriately. So it's a robotic, emotional tail.
Do you know that cats and dogs do that too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their argument on the Kickstarter is that you don't have to feed this. You don't have to, clean up after it. You don't have.
But it doesn't have no face.
Yes. Well, who needs a face when you've got a pillow with a tail?
What are you going to boop?
Exactly.
Yes. How are you gonna? Yes. There's nothing to boop. You just put your head on it, and the tail strangles you to death.
You need a snoot to boop.
Yep.
Snoot to boop. Anyway,
you're never gonna get a "we rate tailed pillows" Twitter that anyone's gonna follow.
It's also a robot, so one day someone is gonna be strangled by this thing.
Yeah.
So I'm just.
It's like if your Roomba got a pet.
Yeah.
Why not just put a tail on your fucking Roomba?
I know.
Except the Roomba would probably either try to hump it or try to suck up the tail.
Probably.
Yeah.
Basically result in the same thing.
I wonder what the tail would do in the humping situation.
Anyway. Be lucky it doesn't have a face to help. I'm being
Ben Bradley asks
I
it leaves
remember.
dead batteries around. So Zorobox for dead battery.
No, it has no anus.
They didn't say
It
that.
does have a battery compartment.
Yeah. Under its tail traps.
Oh my
She
god.
looks so wistful looking over
I
at
know.
her
I know. She's
stupid
like,
pillow.
I
She looks
miss
a little
my
horrified, doesn't she?
prehensile
Yeah, I
tail
think she's
pillow.
looking and it's like, how the fuck did I get hired for this?
Hell no.
I'm pretty. I'm smart. I got the wagging pillow ad. You're better than that, sweetie.
Anyway,
Oh my god,
I'm
that's
putting
so
it away.
funny.
Even the plant looked embarrassed.
plant did. It did, and that was also a robotic plant.
Mm.
So it has emotional leaves.
Oh my god, that's so fucked up.
Yes, it's actually not the worst thing I've seen on Kickstarter, but it is close. Anyway,
Yeah. Well, you know, the Japanese had done.
Done.
They
Sometimes they're good
seal.
at technology, it turns out.
They've done a pet seal that was meant to be a friend to the elderly or something, and they picked the seal because it wasn't exactly, you know.
What about the robotic the robotic helper bear? Did you remember that one? It's kind of panda-like.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do some creepy.
So then, why did they do this mutation?
What?
If this is like a mutation, this is
just another attempt to optimize, the behavior you like and eliminate the behavior you don't.
Well, no, you got to put big freaking eyes on it.
You can
And
put visual
probably,
eyes on it, but then in this way you don't have to actually treat, because like before, if it's anamorphic, if it looks like a creature, then we'll feel sorry for it. We'll you'll have this empathy, and when it tries to kill you, we'll let them.
Maybe they didn't put eyes on it so nobody sees you petting the pillow.
Yeah.
So you feel less self-conscious about it.
When a pillow moves, that freaks me out. And it moves on its own. So you're not supposed to do that.
But I think we should try to squeeze in the word algorithm a few more times.
That's true. I wonder what
play to the crowd.
Whether they train the tail using an algorithm.
Could be.
Yes. Anyway. Let's wrap this bitch up.
Okay.
I'm going to actually throw an audible here and just go straight to announcements and end, because I don't have a book, and the reason I don't have a book is because my iPad is crashing on me every 5 minutes during the show. So it's actually amazing that I've got my notes up, and I know. Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. They come in foldy paper form.
That's true, but
wow.
I could go get a paper book, and you guys can just sit here and wait for a second if you want.
No, we can.
Yeah. Okay. I'll be right back.
Halloween.
Play some elevator music.
Snow globes.
Let's all
neither have snow, nor are they technically globes. Discuss amongst yourselves.
Anyway.
He's back.
Nobody guessed the movie except for Tim did. What was the movie, Tim?
Oh, it's The 13th Floor.
Yes, it was. I
always like to point out to people that in the year 1999, there were 3 different movies that came out in the same year.
Yeah.
That were all about the idea of what if we had VR that was so good that you couldn't recognize the VR. And one was The 13th Floor.
Yeah.
The other one was a very weird David Cronenberg movie called Existence.
Oh, yeah.
Existence with a Z.
That was so bizarre.
But the one that everybody remembers is The Matrix.
Of course, it's the middle finger, which,
But 13th Floor was a neat movie. I liked it.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. I like the whole kind of idea of, I don't know.
Don't spoil it for people.
There's a big mystery that's kind of you don't figure out till the end, and also there's okay. We'll talk about it. If you've seen the movie, find me on Facebook, and we'll have a nice discussion.
It's got a nice twist to it.
Yeah, it does. So it wasn't a great movie. Didn't do that well, but it's one of the ones I like. So I thought I'd throw it in there. Anyway, So I'm going to skip the book time because you guys are awesome. Thank you for bringing books. Save them for next week.
Okay.
It'll be even further from Halloween then.
I'm actually working on a book, but because I don't have it in front of me, I can't read the quotes because I don't want this to disappear again because I did it twice already during the show. Anyway, everybody's watching. Do we have any announcements? Is there anything coming up? I mean, besides Christmas and the end of the
Thanksgiving
and hopefully impeachment.
Yeah.
What else? No.
Don't hold your breath on that one.
Yeah, well, it's a hope.
I wish I had Republican senators who I could work on.
Oh.
You know,
Yeah.
we don't.
No.
Yeah,
We're glad we have the senators.
That's true.
I have a Republican governor.
Bad Bob.
I'm not thrilled with.
But nobody will listen to, you know.
Oh, we're voting for new governor next week, but whatever it is, it's not going to be Christie.
Woohoo! Yep, that's a good thing.
All right.
Okay, then.
Wait a minute. There's one thing.
Oh.
The world's going to end the day before our next show. Last I've heard on the world ending thing.
Oh.
So
okay.
So we'll see you next week, everyone.
Everyone have a good weekend. Really, have a good weekend. I'm serious. Then that's it. We'll just do the music and all that stuff.
Okay.
Thanks everybody for tuning in and watching and participating. And Ben, you're awesome. Virtual Skeptics is an production of whatstheharm.net, Skeptic Command, myself, ICBS Everywhere, and Alpha Moon. Our logo was designed by Sarah Mayhew at sarahmayhew.com, and our theme music was by Music King. And that is the creepiest thing ever.
Yeah, it is pretty creepy.
Happy Halloween, everyone.